I wasn't expecting much when I moved into that new apartment building. Honestly, I just wanted peace and a working heater. Nothing dramatic. After the breakup, I needed somewhere quiet, something predictable. Instead, I got Nate. He moved in 2 doors down from me during my second week there. I remember because I almost dropped my laundry basket when I saw him wrestling a futon through the hallway, his white t-shirt soaked with sweat and clinging to his back. Not that I was checking him out or anything. I was just startled. That's what I told myself. I didn't plan to talk to him. I wasn't in the mood to meet anyone. But he smiled at me that first day, easy and warm, and said, "Hey, new neighbor, I'm Nate. You ever figure out how to work the dryer here without sacrificing your entire wardrobe?" I smirked, still trying to crack the code. From there, it started small. Little nods in the hallway. "How's it going?" Texts when the elevator broke. Again. One night, he offered to split a pizza because the delivery minimum was $20 and we were both starving. "I'm terrible company tonight," I warned him, sitting cross-legged on his floor because he didn't have a couch yet. "Long week." He handed me a slice and shrugged. "Perfect. I was hoping you'd carry the conversation anyway." He had this way of looking at people. Direct, but not aggressive. Curious, a little playful. I noticed how his jeans fit him too well, and how his hair curled at the back of his neck when it got too long. I also noticed how he never talked about anyone he was seeing. Not that I asked. Not that I cared. I kept telling myself we were just neighbors. The real shift happened on a Thursday night in late October. It was cold enough to see your breath, and I was carrying groceries back from the corner store. Nate was already standing by the building's front door, jiggling the handle. "Locked out?" I asked, fishing for my keys. He nodded. "Forgot my code. Again. I swear this place was designed to make us suffer." I laughed, stepped around him, and unlocked the door. "Try not to freeze to death next time." He followed me inside, and I could feel his eyes on me as I climbed the stairs ahead of him. I tried not to think about it. Tried even harder not to turn around and meet that stare. But I didn't have to. Because just as I was about to head into my apartment, he called out, "Hey, you got plans tonight?" I hesitated. "No." "Why?" He scratched the back of his neck, suddenly unsure of himself. "I was gonna watch this old horror movie. It's probably terrible. But I figured, if you're around." It was supposed to be casual. Just a movie. I told myself I didn't need to overthink it. I said yes. What followed wasn't anything earth-shattering. We sat on his living room floor with a bowl of popcorn between us. The movie was predictably awful, and he kept making dumb commentary that had me laughing more than I'd laughed in weeks. I didn't even notice how close we were sitting until our knees touched. He didn't move away. Neither did I. Then came the silence. That familiar, heavy silence when the credits rolled and the light from the screen flickered over his face. "I haven't done this in a while," he said quietly. "What, watch terrible movies?" He gave me a look. "No, just hung out with someone. Like this. No pressure, no pretending." His words landed heavier than he probably meant them to. "Yeah," I said. "Me neither." And that's when everything started to change. The next few days were different. Not drastically, not in a way anyone else would notice, but I felt it. The air between Nate and me had shifted. We still passed each other in the hallway, still nodded, still exchanged the usual "hey" and "how's it going?" But now there was something else behind those words. Something warmer. Something that lingered. The following Friday, I came home to find a note taped to my door. "Pizza again? 7-ish? N." I stood there for a second, holding my keys, staring at the note like it was a foreign object. Then I smiled without meaning to and nodded to myself. That night, we sat on his floor again. He still didn't have a couch, and somehow it had become our thing. The lights were low, the only glow coming from a string of fairy lights draped across his bookshelf. "You should get furniture at some point," I said, nudging his knee. "I'm holding out for a free one," he said, taking a bite of pizza. "Some people post them on Craigslist. Or maybe a rich aunt will die and leave me her love seat." Optimistic. You're welcome to contribute one if it's bothering you, he said with a smirk. I laughed. I'm not furnishing your apartment just because you keep feeding me pizza. Fair. We ate in a comfortable silence for a while. Then he asked, So, what happened? I looked up, caught off guard. What do you mean? With the guy before. You said you moved in to get away from everything. I figured there's a story. I leaned back on my hands, exhaling slowly. You sure you want to hear it? I'm not exactly fun story hour. He nodded. I don't mind. So I told him. Not the whole thing, not every gory detail, but enough. About how I was with someone for over a year. How it got messy toward the end. Passive-aggressive texts. Arguments that started over dishes, but were never about dishes. How I found out he'd been seeing someone else and didn't even bother to hide it. That sucks, Nate said simply. Yeah, I said. It did. He was quiet for a moment, then said, You seem better now. I looked at him. Do I? Yeah, he said. More like you're coming back to yourself. I swallowed hard. That shouldn't have hit as deep as it did. I've been meaning to ask, I said, trying to pivot. You seeing anyone? He shook his head. No, not really looking either. Why not? He shrugged, then glanced at me, like he was testing the waters. I don't know, I guess I've been trying to figure some things out. His tone shifted, slightly more serious. My heart ticked up a beat. Like what? He stared at the pizza box for a second before answering. Like why I keep finding excuses to text you. Or why I kinda like when our legs touch and you don't move away. I didn't breathe. Not right away. He finally looked at me. That weird? I shook my head slowly. No, it's not. Silence settled again, thicker now, but not uncomfortable. He leaned back, his shoulder brushing mine. I've never really said anything like that to a guy before, he added, voice low. Not out loud. I'm glad you did, I said. And I meant it. He didn't try to kiss me, and I didn't expect him to. But when I left his apartment that night, I stood at my own door for a long time, not wanting to go inside. Eventually, I did. But I didn't sleep much. The next day, I wasn't sure how to act. Should I text him? Should I pretend like nothing happened? Should I replay the way his shoulder had leaned into mine 100 more times like some kind of sleep-deprived teenager? Because that's what I did. I sat on the edge of my bed, coffee in hand, rereading our last texts, which were, pathetically, about pineapple on pizza. Around noon, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find Nate standing there in sweatpants and a hoodie, holding 2 coffee cups and a brown paper bag. Brought peace offerings, he said, lifting the bag. Cinnamon rolls. You didn't have to, I said, stepping aside. He gave a small shrug. Wanted to. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, which I'd barely used since moving in. For a few minutes, it was just the sound of coffee being sipped and the occasional hum of traffic from the street outside. I kept sneaking glances at him, trying to gauge if he was feeling awkward. He didn't look it. If anything, he looked calm, settled. Like showing up at my door was the most natural thing in the world. So, he said eventually, wiping a bit of frosting off his thumb. About last night, my heart immediately jumped into my throat. Yeah, I said, trying to sound casual and probably failing miserably. I wasn't drunk, he said, eyes meeting mine, or playing around. Just so that's clear, I swallowed. Okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, he went on. This is kind of new for me, but I wasn't imagining things. There's something here, right? I nodded slowly, heart pounding. Yeah, there is. He exhaled, visibly relieved. Good. I thought maybe I was making shit up. You weren't, I said. But, Nate, are you sure? He looked at me steadily. No, but I'm sure I want to figure it out with you. That shouldn't have hit as hard as it did, but it did. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. It was just honest. And maybe that's what got me the most. He wasn't trying to be cool or charming, he was just being Nate. I reached out and touched his hand, and he didn't pull away. His fingers curled slightly, meeting mine halfway. We sat like that for a while, coffee cooling on the table. After a few minutes, he stood up. "I should go," he said. "I have class in like 15 minutes. "Okay." He paused at the door, looking back at me. "You want to come by later? I'm going to try and cook something. Can't promise it'll be edible, but—" "I'm in," I said. He smiled, then left. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, heart still thumping like I'd just run a mile. That evening, I walked over to Nate's place with a bottle of cheap wine and low expectations about whatever he was cooking. I knocked, and before I could even say anything, he opened the door with a dish towel over his shoulder and a slightly panicked look on his face. "I think I might be poisoning us," he said. I held up the wine. Good thing I brought an antidote. Inside, the apartment smelled interesting, something between garlic and impending doom. He gestured toward the stove. "It's supposed to be chicken stir-fry, but I think I messed up the sauce. Twice." I peered into the pan. It looked edible. Maybe. "Is the chicken at least cooked?" "Definitely," he said. "Probably, I think." We both laughed, and somehow that was enough to break the weird tension that had been sitting between us all day. We ended up eating the stir-fry on the floor again, because his dining table was still just a concept and a couple of unopened IKEA boxes. "This is actually decent," I admitted around a mouthful. "Really?" I nodded. "Might even survive to see tomorrow." He grinned. "Then next time, I'll make pasta. I can't mess that up, right?" "You'd be surprised," I teased. We ate, drank the wine, and talked about nothing. Classes, neighbors, the guy on the third floor who always played jazz at 2 a.m. The wine helped loosen everything. I leaned back against the wall, my legs stretched out, my head a little lighter than usual. Nate looked over at me, his expression soft. "I was nervous all day," he said. I turned my head. "About what?" "This?" he said, waving vaguely between us. I kept thinking I was going to mess it up. "You haven't," I said. "If anything, I'm the one who's weirdly nervous." "You don't seem nervous." "That's because I'm faking it really well." He laughed, then nudged my leg with his foot. "You don't have to." The way he looked at me then, calm, steady, it knocked something loose in me. And before I could second guess it, I shifted closer. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched me, eyes locked on mine. "You ever done this before?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, but I've thought about it, more than I ever admitted." "Same," I said. There was a beat, a pause thick with everything we weren't saying, before he leaned in. The kiss was slow. No rush, no pressure, just a soft press of lips and the warm brush of breath, and the clumsy way our noses bumped slightly. But it was perfect in that stupid, beautiful way first kisses sometimes are. We pulled back, just barely, foreheads resting together. "I guess I'm not straight," he murmured. "I could have told you that," I said, and he laughed against my mouth. We stayed like that for a while, our knees tangled and our hands finding each other, until the wine was gone, and the only light left in the apartment came from the city glowing outside his window. The morning after was surprisingly normal. I woke up in my own bed, sunlight bleeding through the blinds, and for a second, I wasn't sure if I had dreamed it all. The wine, the kiss, the way Nate had looked at me like I was something new and familiar all at once. Then my phone buzzed. "Nate, FYI, I didn't burn the kitchen down." I grinned like an idiot. We didn't talk much that morning, just a few dumb texts back and forth, but it was enough to keep me floating through the rest of the day. I worked from home, editing some copy for a client, but I barely focused. Every time I looked at my phone, I hoped I'd see another message. Around 6, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Nate holding a grocery bag in one hand and a bottle of hot sauce in the other. "I'm making tacos," he said. "You in? You really like feeding me. It's the only way I can get you to hang out with me." We smiled at each other, and it was different this time. More open, less uncertain. I grabbed my keys and followed him back to his place. This time, we cooked together. He chopped onions while I browned the meat. At one point, he leaned past me to grab a spatula, and his hand brushed my lower back. Just barely. But he didn't pull away fast like he used to. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't have to. Dinner was good. Better than the stir-fry, anyway. Afterward, we sat on the floor again, our plates forgotten beside us. He looked over at me, a soft crease between his brows. "You okay with this?" I met his eyes. "Yeah. Are you?" He nodded. "It's just weird, not in a bad way. Just new. I keep thinking maybe I should be freaking out, but I'm not. I feel kinda calm." "Good weird," I said. "Yeah. Like maybe I should have done this sooner." We were quiet for a while, and then I leaned back against the wall, stretching my legs. Nate did the same. Our knees touched. Neither of us moved away. "You want to stay over?" he asked, not looking at me. My stomach did a little flip. "Like, stay?" "Yeah." I hesitated. Not to sound like a grandma, but I didn't bring my toothbrush. He gave a small smile. "I'll share mine." "That's disgusting. You love it." And the truth was, I did. That night, we lay in his bed, fully clothed, facing each other in the dark. His hand found mine under the blanket, and he laced our fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't do anything else. No pressure. No expectations. Just two guys figuring it out. But even in the quiet, in the dark, I could feel something beginning to take root. Not lust, not infatuation. Something slower, stronger. Something that felt suspiciously like the start of something real. We settled into a rhythm after that night. It wasn't like we became a couple overnight. There were no big declarations, no official talk. But the way we moved around each other shifted. He started showing up at my door, with coffee more often. I started doing my work at his kitchen table instead of mine. His hoodies ended up in my laundry pile. My leftover takeout migrated into his fridge. It just happened. One night, about 2 weeks in, I found him on my couch with my laptop open and a guilty look on his face. "Okay, before you say anything," he said, holding up his hands. "I was just looking for a charger." I crossed my arms and ended up in my browser history. He winced. "Accidentally." "You accidentally typed in, 'how to tell if your neighbor is into you'?" He groaned, sinking lower into the couch. "Okay, I deserve that." I sat beside him, nudging his knee. "You could have just asked me." He glanced sideways at me, half sheepish, half amused. "Yeah, well, guess I still have some unlearning to do." We talked about it after that. Finally, he told me how confusing it had been for him, growing up with all these assumptions about who he was supposed to be, how he was supposed to act. He said he never really questioned it until me. I didn't press, I didn't need to. I knew what that felt like. "I used to think," he said slowly, "that if I ever liked a guy, it'd be a one-off. Just a blip. But this doesn't feel like a blip." I didn't say anything right away, just reached for his hand. Later that week, I had a meeting that ran way too long, and by the time I got home, I was dead on my feet. Nate was already inside my apartment, sprawled across the couch in sweatpants, a hoodie, and one sock for some reason. "Dinner's on the counter," he said. "I made grilled cheese. Fancy, I know." "You have a key now?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He held it up, smirking. "You gave it to me last weekend, remember?" "Oh, right. I was drunk," he grinned. "And romantic." I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed next to him. He lifted an arm, wordlessly inviting me in. I rested my head on his chest, and we stayed like that for a while. He smelled like my detergent. The next few days passed in a blur. Classes, work, shared breakfasts, lazy nights. It started feeling less like two people slowly orbiting each other and more like something steady. Normal, comfortable, but comfort can be scary too. Because part of me was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. It happened the day he introduced me to his sister. We were walking back from the farmer's market. His idea, obviously, and he was carrying way too many peaches, insisting they were perfect for a crisp. I was teasing him about his sudden obsession with seasonal fruit when his phone rang. "Hey," he answered, pausing mid-step. Yeah, I'm free now." He glanced at me. "You mind?" I shook my head. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at a sidewalk cafe across from his older sister, Harper. She was sharp, funny, and suspicious of me, in the way siblings always are when they're trying to protect someone they care about. "So," she said, sipping her coffee, eyes locked on me, "you're the one." Nate nearly choked on his drink. "What?" she asked innocently. "You think I wouldn't notice he started humming in the kitchen and actually folding his laundry?" I laughed. "I mean, if that's the standard, I'll take the credit." Nate muttered something about betrayal, but he was smiling, and Harper just gave me this look like, "All right, you'll do." Later, as we walked home, he was quiet. "You good?" I asked, nudging his elbow. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. It's just, that's the first time I've introduced someone to family, like this." I looked at him. "And?" He let out a breath. "Didn't think it'd feel like a big deal. But it kinda does." I didn't say anything, just reached for his hand and held it as we crossed the street. That night, back at my place, we cooked something resembling a peach crisp. It turned out slightly too wet and a little too sweet, but we ate it anyway, legs tangled on the couch, laughing at our complete lack of baking instincts. He fell asleep on me halfway through the movie we were watching, his head against my shoulder, his breath soft and steady. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel restless or worried or like I needed to check if he meant it. He was here, I was here, that was enough. I think that was the night I knew I'd fallen for him. Not in the explosive, dramatic rom-com way, but in the quiet, undeniable, I want this to last kind of way. A few weeks later, everything nearly unraveled. It started with a text I wasn't supposed to see. We were at my place. Nate had gone to shower, and his phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But when a name popped up I didn't recognize, followed by, "So have you told him yet?" my heart sank. I sat with that for too long, not knowing what it meant. Overthinking. Spiraling. By the time he came out, towel draped around his neck, hair wet and sticking to his forehead, I was trying too hard to act normal. He noticed instantly. "You good?" "Yeah," I lied. He frowned. "You sure?" I nodded again, a little too fast. "Totally." But I wasn't, and I kept not being okay for the next 2 days, avoiding eye contact, overthinking every word he said. Until finally, he cornered me in the hallway. "All right," he said, arms crossed. "What's going on?" I caved. "Who's Darren?" His eyebrows lifted. "Darren?" "My old friend from high school." "Why?" I hesitated. "I saw a text." He blinked, then exhaled. "Right, that." He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly sheepish. "I didn't tell you," he said quietly, because I wasn't sure how to bring it up. "But I've been thinking about coming out." My heart dropped. "Wait, that's what the text was about?" "Yeah, he was checking in on me. I told him about you." He stepped closer. "I didn't mean for it to be a secret. I just wanted to feel ready." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Oh, I like you," he said simply. "That hasn't changed, but I'm still figuring all this out, and if you need me to be further along, or more out, or more sure—" "I don't," I interrupted. He blinked. "You don't?" I stepped forward. "You're here. That's all I need." His shoulders relaxed, tension dropping from his face. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "God, you scared me. You scared me. Guess we're even." He kissed me then. Not a hesitant kiss. Not a maybe. A real one. Certain. Present. We didn't fix everything that night. He didn't come out on Instagram the next morning, or declare us boyfriends in the building group chat. but he started walking closer when we passed each other in the hall. He stopped flinching when someone saw us leave together. He stopped hiding how he looked at me. And little by little, it got easier. A few months later, we were on the same couch where we'd eaten our first terrible dinner together, watching something dumb, when he turned to me out of nowhere and said, "You know, I still don't have a couch." I raised an eyebrow. "We're literally sitting on a couch." He shrugged. "Yeah, but this one's yours." I stared at him. He smiled. "You want to move in?" I stared a second longer. "You're serious?" "I want my laundry mixed with yours. I want one fridge, one bed. I want a shared couch that we both hate and both replace someday." And just like that, everything shifted again. Because life didn't explode into some dramatic climax. It just kept unfolding, awkward, beautiful, and real. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized I wasn't just in love with him. I was building a life with him.